Hello and welcome everyone to our RENATE webinar. During this webinar, religious and their co-workers networking against trafficking and exploitation are delighted to introduce you to the members of RENATE Awareness Raising Task Group. So tonight we plan to share with you not only many issues and facts about this heinous crime, but also we will offer you many tips and skills about how you can join us in this task of combating human trafficking. We have a big agenda tonight, so with no delay, I will pass over to Imelda, who will begin our webinar. And please be aware and bear with us, as this was a recording. It was a recorded event, so it starts a little abruptly.
So together, here we are tonight, and I thought the sower was a very good story from the New Testament to illustrate what we as an awareness raising group are trying to achieve by this webinar, and in fact in our mission against human trafficking. As we know, the story was told to try and help us to see how we can be more effective in mission. So the call is to deepen the roots. It's only when we really work hard to educate and really enable people to see the horror and the evil and the crime of human trafficking in a most true way, that somehow the energy is awakened to come on board, and a corporate gather across the world grows in momentum to make the deep roots to rid the world of this crime. These shallow roots, it may make change for a little while. We may be able to achieve a little, but actually what we're trying to achieve is to rid the world of human trafficking by 2030 as an efficient way and means that is possible. Tonight, 8 members of RENATE will be sharing 8 different methodologies and approaches and information about human trafficking that will enable to see how you and we can work together to accomplish at least a little bit more, the ridding the world of human trafficking. We're inviting you to open your hearts and minds to become co-workers and co-creators in this work. So this is our purpose tonight. It's to create goodwill. Pope Francis has said, it is not possible to remain indifferent before the knowledge that human beings are bought and sold like goods. So we invite all of you to open your hearts, to not be indifferent, to be of goodwill. We invite all leaders in the country, the politicians, the heads of corporates, the business people and finance, local workers, the social workers, the hospital workers, the people working in the streets, to come on board and open their hearts, their minds and their eyes to this crime that's happening around them. And we ask you of goodwill to be with us for 10 more years. The Pope, the UN, the EU, all corporate bodies working together have an aim to rid the world of this crime by 2030. So let's try and do it. And now I'd like to hand over to Annie, who is going to be our moderator tonight. She's a member of RENATE and works in the field of law. So thank you, Annie.
Thank you very much, Sister Imelda. So my name's Annie Bannister. I've worked with RENATE for many years now, and it's fantastic to be asked to assist tonight. So the first person in terms of presenting tonight, I'd like to introduce is called Yvonne van der Kar, and she is based in the Netherlands. She is one of the founding members of RENATE, so has been there from the very beginning, and she would like to talk to you a little bit about how the collaboration between lay people and the religious works extremely well in helping raise awareness against this heinous crime. So over to you, Yvonne.
Thank you very much. So as Annie already said, my name is Yvonne van der Kar. I live and I work in the Netherlands. I am involved in the anti-trafficking work since the early 1990s, and I will share with you some ideas and good practices of prevention and awareness raising through the years. So in 1991, a group of Dutch religious sisters started a network that was called Religious Against Trafficking in Women. At that time, this was a completely new phenomenon. And we thought trafficking occurred in prostitution and only to migrant women. The sisters in the network were mainly missionaries who had returned home from working many years abroad. They had been working in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. And now, back in the Netherlands and speaking the languages, they were often involved in helping people wherever they could. These sisters came across women with drug addictions, women with health problems, etc. The sisters visited women in the red light districts and listened to their stories. They discovered that these women were forced to work there. In 1991, this group of sisters from 13 different congregations of active women religious decided to use their network in the Netherlands and all over the world to raise awareness about this issue. Their congregations supported this new mission. The sisters made a leaflet informing women and girls not to believe the stories of people, mainly men, promising them a job or a study abroad. This leaflet was then translated by the network of sisters in 57 different languages, all printed on a simple A4 paper in black and white, so sisters all over the world could copy and distribute as many leaflets as they needed. One missionary sister working in Ghana had a big iron box in the back of her truck filled with thousands of leaflets. Wherever she came, she asked women and girls, "Did someone offer you or your friends a job abroad? Read the leaflet, and if you have questions, my name and phone number is on the back, and contact me. Don't believe all the stories." Although awareness raising is different in every country, the sisters knew the culture and the language. And the leaflet was also translated in or made into drawings for illiterate people. One sister in Malawi asked the local artist to paint it on sheets. She could hang the paintings on a wall, on a tree, and talk about trafficking. She informed thousands of girls just before they graduated from high school in Malawi. Another very strong way of raising awareness is the film Anna, a 12-minute short film where a girl from Eastern Europe tells her story. It raises some questions and is meant to start discussions. This film from 2007 is still used to inform politicians about trafficking, is used at the police academy, and is also used to inform hotel staff and is still very potent. In 2008, we found a way to raise awareness by using the World Football Cup that would take place in our country. We made a rubber stamp and asked all our network to put this stamp on all their outgoing posts. It said, "Show human trafficking the red card," in Dutch. Many congregations, women's organizations, embassies, schools, sport clubs used the stamp. So it was very well known. After that, we decided to design a real stamp. In the Netherlands, you can buy stamps with your own design for weddings or for births. So we made a stamp with "Stop Human Trafficking," and our website. We produced thousands of them. You can see the stamp in the right corner below. In the upper right corner, you see a folder we produced with reflections on human trafficking. A well-known Dutch theologist, Carmelite Carlos Mesters, who works in Brazil and is famous for his work in liberation theology, wrote 5 booklets for us, all reflections on human trafficking, of women, of children, of migrants, of workers, and a booklet for religious working to fight this crime. In all the years of working for this organization, me and my colleague have given many talks in the Netherlands and abroad. We have spoken for congregations, women's groups, churches, Rotary, schools. We train police officers, nurses and doctors, workers at the court of law, etc. Here you see some images of these talks. We always start by giving the audience a red and a green card. We ask them some questions, and if they think it is the right answer, they put up the green card, and if it's wrong, they show the red card. This is to make the group feel at ease. Human trafficking can be sometimes a difficult subject to discuss, but it also helps me to see what the group already knows about human trafficking. So a question could be, human trafficking only happens in big cities like Amsterdam, or only women are victims. Well, you can think of many questions that fit the group you are about to address. Another campaign I want to mention is the Way of the Cross. We asked an artist, a member of our group, to make 14 paintings, the stages of the Way of the Cross, but in a special way. In Luke 23, we read that Jesus says, "Do not weep for me, but for yourselves and for your children." Therefore, we asked the artist to make paintings of the life of a trafficked girl. A group of sisters and pastors wrote for each of the paintings a short text. And we decided to add a 15th stage. The Way of the Cross is named after the girl, Elena. She dies in the 14th stage, but because of the awareness-raising work of many groups, another girl is saved. This is the last painting. We place the paintings on easels in a church or another big room. We also took it to the European Parliament in Brussels, and people can walk by the paintings, read the texts that are like prayers. And then, of course, last but not least, since 2013, we have a very important ally in our work, Pope Francis. Before he was Pope, it often was very difficult to get religious men and priests to listen to us. But Pope Francis has written in all his writings about human trafficking. You can read it back in 2013, 15, and even last month when he published Fratelli Tutti. Because women religious asked him, Pope Francis has established an international day of prayer to end human trafficking. This day is on the 8th of February, the day of Saint Bakita, a woman that was a slave from Africa, became a sister in Italy, and is now a saint. This is a small number of the many actions and projects on prevention and awareness raising we have developed in the last years. So, thank you.
That was absolutely amazing. It's so varied, the amount of work that you've been involved in. It just opens up our eyes as to different ways we can think about raising awareness. Doesn't need to be just by a leaflet or just by somebody standing up and talking. There are many, many other ways to get the message across. And thank you very much, Yvonne. That was amazing. So I'm now going to introduce our next speaker. She's from Albania, and her name is Arvida Baloli, and she is a lay member of RENATE and is a social worker for Mary Ward Loreto Foundation in Albania. She's going to talk to us about the national referral mechanism in Albania, which she will go on to tell you what that is and how it works. And she also wants to tell us about how using that national referral mechanism, it helps with the rehabilitation of victims that go into shelters. So over to you, Arvida.
Thank you, Annie. I'm glad to be in this webinar. I'm sharing my screen. Okay, I'm going to talk about the national referral mechanism as an important mechanism in coordinating the anti-trafficking work in each country. Okay. A national referral mechanism is a cooperative framework through which state actors fulfill their obligations in order to protect and to promote the human rights of trafficked persons, coordinating their efforts in a strategic partnership with civil society. But why this mechanism is important? First, it provides protection. The basic aim of an NRM is to ensure that the human rights of trafficked persons are respected and to provide an effective way to refer the victims to the appropriate services. Secondly, it improves the national policies and procedures, on a broad range of victim-related issues, such as witness protections, victim compensation, and repatriation regulations. Since an NRM requires close cooperation between government and civil society, their creation can help foster good practices of democratic institution building by developing effective linkages between government and civil society. By the way that NRM functions, it involves all levels of society, from individuals to civil society and governmental structure on a national or local level. National referral mechanism also raise awareness to public and to state authorities. National referral mechanism has 5 components. The first one is the identification of presumed trafficked persons, the basic principles of cooperation agreements, support and protection services, repatriation and social inclusion, and specific legal provisions. Here is an overview of NRM in Albania. Firstly, I want to emphasize that Albania is an origin and destination country for victims of trafficking, mostly women and children who are subject to trafficking in person, especially to forced prostitutions, forced labor, and begging of children as well. Albanian government and civil society are working closely to combat this phenomenon. NRM in Albania has followed the model that is described by OSCE ODIHR for the joint approach to protect the rights of trafficked persons. And this mechanism has been established in 2005. The coordinator of this mechanism is the deputy minister, who has a team of 4 members. And this mechanism is a structure near the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Within this structure, the competent authorities evolved, and they do follow the process, the whole process of case management, from the identification to the protection of victims of trafficking or potential victim of trafficking. And this happened in accordance with standard operation procedures, which is a very useful, a very helpful document for the identification and for the protection of the victims, and also it gives the NGOs the right to initially identify the cases, so potential victims or victims of trafficking. NRM in Albania is composed by public institutions and NGOs as well, such as ministries, health and social welfare, internal affairs, Ministry of Education, Agency of Child Protection. Even it's not official member of NRM, it is very active, social services, Albanian police, shelters, and NGOs. Mary Ward Loreto, the foundation that I work for 4 years so far, is a member of NRM since October 2018, and we are represented by my co-worker, which is the psychologist and the coordinator of Mary Ward Loreto Advice and Service Center of Tirana. Best practice of NRM in Albania. NRM in Albania has some best practices, even though the number of cases, identified cases, so victims or potential victims of trafficking is still low. We see an improvement of the process of identification since the NGOs and public institutions are following the standard operation procedures. This is a big, NRM has a big step for creation of the active advisory board of survivors of human trafficking, and who else can give a better advice that somebody or someone who has been going through human trafficking. NRM as well has organized successfully awareness raising activities and campaigns with mostly with URAT network, which is a strong network, United Response Against Human Trafficking. And due to this, we have seen that the society engagement is increased. Here is Mary Ward Loreto experience. So the foundation that I work, Mary Ward Loreto has 8-year experience on working on anti-trafficking, and we collaborate closely with NRM. We are member of NRM, as I mentioned, since October 2018. And in Tirana, we have an advice and service center offering advice for victims of trafficking, sexual assault victims, and domestic violence victims. In collaboration with NRM, we have best practice in casual identification and also in rehabilitation outside of the shelter. What do I refer to casual identification? At ASK, we have some cases that they first refer multiple issues, not a trafficking issue. And while we assist them with different services, we have identified elements of human trafficking. Those cases we have offered direct support, and in some times we have referred them to shelters or other necessary services. Also, we have long-term programs for rehabilitation outside of the shelter, because there are some survivors of human trafficking that have completed their sheltering programs and they still need support after we do a fully assessment of their situation and their case. We support them, offer protection services in order to reintegrate into the community. And also there are some cases that they choose to reintegrate into the community outside of the sheltering programs, and we do offer for them direct support services such as sheltering, food packages, healthcare, legal aid, and other services in accordance with their needs in order to reintegrate into the community. And here are some pictures during the awareness raising activities and campaigns. We aim to raise awareness on human trafficking phenomena into the community and the ways to address and to report it. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Alveda. That was amazing. I didn't realise that the Albanian MRM had actually come into place before the UK one. So it came into place in 2005, whereas the UK one came into place in 2009. And what Alveda was telling us was how important having a national referral mechanism is on a national basis in order to identify potential victims and obviously get them some help and treatment. So without further ado, I'm now going to hand over to Sister Eilish Coe. She is a native of Dublin in Ireland, and she is a member of the Religious Sisters of Charity Congregation, which was founded in Dublin in 1815. Eilish has been a very active member of RENATE, representing the core group and also the working board. And a particular element that she wants to share with us today is how she uses the medium of a story to help raise awareness. And I'd like to now hand over to Eilish to share her story.
Hello, everybody. As Annie said, I'm Sister Eilish Coe, and I'm in Dublin, Ireland. What I'm going to do this evening is to show how you might use a story as an awareness-raising tool in a school or a parish or in any other group where you are given the opportunity to talk to people. It's very simple. All you need is a good story and then some illustrations. And you hang these on a corridor or in a hall. Ask your participants to walk from picture to picture and to follow the story. Follow the girl in the story, in her footsteps. So here's the story. My name is Precious, and here is my story. I was born in a rural area of an African country. I always wanted to be a nurse. Even when I was still at school, I organized a treatment center in my village. I used to wash and bind up wounds with clean clothes, which I cut from old bed sheets and towels. And I had some disinfectant, which my mother gave me to clean the wounds. Sometimes I advised the boys and girls to go to the clinic in the town, and I gave them a bottle of clean water to take with them. When I walked through the village, the boys used to call out, "Nurse, nurse, I have a pain in my heart. Please make it better for me." I just smiled at them. When I finished secondary school, I got a place in the nursing school in the city. I was very happy about this, and I packed my bags and left home. I missed my family very much, and I know they missed me. But they were very proud of me, and they looked forward to the day when I would be a qualified nurse and able to contribute to the support of my parents, my brothers and sisters. I studied very hard and I passed all my exams. My tutors were very happy with me and they encouraged me to continue as I had begun. One day, as I left the nursing school to go back to my hostel, I met a man in the corridor. "Hello, Precious," he said. I was surprised that he knew my name because he was a stranger to me. "Hello," I answered, wondering who he was and what he wanted. He told me that he was from a nursing agency in the city and that he was looking for the best students in nursing schools so that he could offer them the opportunity to go overseas to get better qualifications. "You are one of those lucky students, Precious," he told me. "I want to offer you a place in a college in Europe." "Oh no," I said, "my parents would never allow me to go." "But think of all the money you could earn in Europe and how you could help your family in future. I will pay all your expenses and make sure you're safe. My organization has plenty of money. Now don't tell your friends about this because they would be jealous and they tried to stop you. This is the only time I'll make this offer. If you don't accept, I will choose another girl. I don't mind, but you will lose a great chance." "Okay," I said, "I will go, but I need to go home and tell my parents." "No, that won't be possible," he said. "We need to leave for the city at once, so that we can make arrangements for you to get your flight to London and then on to another country. By the way, my name is Jerry. Then Jerry made a phone call telling someone he had found the right girl, and we were setting out for the city immediately. A few days later, I was on a plane with Jerry flying out of my country. I was excited and frightened at the same time, thinking of my new life in Europe and the big college I would be studying in. I cried when I thought of my parents and my home, but Jerry said, "Don't worry, precious. When we get to our destination, you can write a letter home and tell your family that you're very happy in your new home and that you will see them when you come back, a highly qualified nurse." We landed in London and then we boarded another plane and flew on to Dublin, Ireland. Ireland was so green. I had never seen green grass like the grass I saw in those Irish fields. "It rains a lot here," Jerry told me, as if he knew the place well. We were met by a friend of Jerry's and taken to a house in the city. Jerry took me upstairs and showed me my room. It was small but very clean. I said that I would like to have a rest because I was tired from traveling. Then Jerry shocked me. "You didn't come here to rest," he said. He took my bag and threw my belongings on the floor. Then he told me to undress and he pushed me onto the bed and he raped me. I screamed and screamed. Jerry just laughed. "No one can hear you," he said. "No one is going to help you." Then he left the room and he locked the door. I lay on the bed crying and shivering and shocked. After a while, I was so tired I fell asleep. Then the door opened and another man came in. "Go and wash yourself," he said harshly, holding the door open for me to go to the bathroom. I took a shower and I tried to open the bathroom window to see if I could get out, but the window had bars on it, so I had no choice but to go back to my room. Then the man gave me some clothes and he told me to put them on. The clothes were very skimpy and they barely covered me. Then the man brought in some sandwiches and a mug of tea, and he said, "Eat up. You have to keep up your strength. You have to work." He waited until I'd had my meal, and then he left the room. Then another man came in and raped me. I screamed and pleaded and I fought, but he just laughed. "Oh, I like it," he said, "when the girls fight back. It makes it more exciting." Then he left, but he'd hardly left the room when another man came in and he too raped me. I was sick and dizzy and I cried bitterly. At last I was left alone and I thought of my parents back home. Oh dear. I stayed in that room for many weeks, being raped every night. I tried not to think, just to concentrate on staying alive. Often the men came, beat me, and they said, "Are you alive? I paid for a woman, not a corpse." One day when I was coming back from the bathroom, I met a blonde girl on the corridor. She looked so pale and frightened that I knew she was suffering the same way as I was. I spoke to her, but she shook her head. I quickly hugged her to let her know I understood. I didn't see her for a few days, and that was when a man came and told us to pack up and go downstairs because we were leaving for another house. On the way out to the waiting car, I looked around to see if I could escape, but the man just pushed me into the back seat of the car with the blonde girl. I immediately tried to open the door, but it was locked. We drove for many hours through the country. I looked out at the fields and the houses, and I wished I could get out and talk to the people walking along the road, but there was no way to do that. At last, the car stopped outside a house, and we were told to get out. An African woman came out of the house. She was smiling, and she embraced us and said, "Welcome, welcome." I thought we were going to be safe, but I soon realized she was just putting on a show for the neighbors. Inside the house, she stopped smiling. She took us into the kitchen and gave us food. It was delicious stew and rice, and I was so hungry that I cleared the plate. "Ah, that's my good African girl," she said. "You appreciate my cooking. You, white girl, you want to insult me? Why can't you eat my food?" The white girl just stared. She hadn't touched the food, and she really didn't know what the woman was saying. Then we were taken upstairs to our rooms, and the raping began all over again. I tried to make my mind go away, back home to my village, so that I wouldn't think of what was happening. I prayed and prayed, begging God to save me. Then one night there was a lot of noise, doors banging and loud screaming. I heard the African woman shouting, "The white girl has gone mad. She's broken the window and cut her hand. There's blood everywhere." The white girl was screaming at the top of her voice. Then we saw blue lights outside and some men in uniform came in. They caught the man who was in charge of the house first. The woman tried to run out the back door, but they caught her too, and they took her out and put her in their car. Then they came for us. The white girl was lying on the bed. I thought she was dead, but an ambulance man came, and then she got up and they put her on a stretcher and took her out to the ambulance. I never saw that girl again. I was taken to a house where some lovely, kind women took care of me. They gave me lovely meals and they listened to me when I wanted to talk. They took me to a clinic where I was examined and treated for some of my injuries. I stayed there for some weeks. It was lovely to be able to sleep, but I had nightmares in which men were coming into my room. Gradually, I got better. Then one day, I was able to tell my story to the Irish police. The day came when I was asked if I wanted to go back to my country. I said yes, but I cried when I thought of my mother and how sad she would be. Eventually, I was taken back to my country, and I stayed for some months in a centre recovering and getting my strength back. This was far from my home village. At last, I was ready to go home. My parents cried with happiness when they saw me. The nursing school took me back and I finished my studies. Now I work in a hospital near home. I keep my eyes and ears open, and I tell the girls never to believe stories they are told by strangers or any promises that the strangers make. And that's Precious' story.
Thank you very much, Sister Irish. That was so moving, and I'm sure all of us listening and looking at those pictures have really felt one with Precious tonight. And that's certainly an amazing way to work at raising awareness through a powerful story like Precious's. I'm now going to move on to our next presenter. Her name is Rachel Swetnam, and she joins us from the UK. She's worked with RENATE for a couple of years now, and she looks after the RENATE website and also all the social media for RENATE. And she's going to share with us some tips and ideas on how best to utilise your online presence to try and raise awareness of anti-trafficking. Over to you, Rachel.
Hi everyone, I'm just going to share my screen quickly. Okay. So, hi everyone, I'm Rachel. I'm the social media and website person, and today I just want to talk to you about media and awareness raising and the huge potential it has for RENATE and other organisations. So media plays a huge part in our lives, some more than others, but particularly during this strange and difficult time of COVID. It's where we find news, campaigns, personal struggles, expression of views, happiness, and most importantly, people. Media gives organisations the opportunity to reach those they would normally not be able to reach, and it allows us at RENATE to reach those in need of our help and to spread the message of our network. So to give you an idea of the power of social media, I want to talk a little bit about the Black Lives Matter campaign. Just bring that up. So the Black Lives Matter launched a campaign called Blackout Tuesday. And this was where people were asked on a particular Tuesday of that month to post a black square to show their solidarity for the cause and to raise awareness throughout the world. The idea was to capture people's attention with these big black squares. And these were the results of the campaign. So we had 12 billion views of the hashtag on TikTok alone. So TikTok is a video sharing platform, and 12 billion views is quite a lot for TikTok. So then on Instagram, which is a platform comprised of pictures and video sharing, 24 million posts regarding this campaign on Instagram was posted. And as you can see on the right of the screen is just a glimpse of the posts that was shared that day. I remember scrolling through that day, and it was just constant black squares. So lots of people getting involved in the campaign. And it got so many people talking that the big companies such as YouTube started acting on it, and YouTube pledged 100 million to support Black creators on their platform. And lots more platforms and organizations also followed a similar idea. So overall, it was a huge success. So we at RENATE have recognised this extremely useful and powerful resource and have been venturing ourselves into the world of social media. Our most recent campaign is our film festival. And this will take place on the 12th of September next year. And to generate excitement and awareness of this event, we ran a film event which premiered on YouTube on the 18th of October. In order to spread the awareness of the event, we created vibrant flyers, an exciting new events website, and posted all over social media. And it was a great success, and it really enabled RENATE to engage a new and younger audience who may not know much about the anti-trafficking world. So another great resource is our website. We currently have an events website as well as a main website, and this is a really useful tool as it provides a foundation for information on who RENATE are and gives the awareness rating a base. It allows us to send people over to our website through social media posts and YouTube videos so that they can find out more. And an example of this is on our events website, we have created a page specifically designed for people who don't know much about anti-trafficking and to encourage them to find out more. It's a place they can go to learn more, and we put a load of links there for sort of more information. Another thing, so we have also taken inspiration from our partners Talitha Coombe with their brilliant use of Instagram. Again, a platform that consists largely of photos. Their use of graphics and colour makes them really interesting, and it's different, and it's also really useful. So with our own Instagram, which is on the left, we have also played around with graphics and colours that represent us, and we're still experimenting with different types of posts to reach more people. And Instagram itself is a brilliant resource that we can and have really benefited from. So I want to finish on what things you could try in your own organisations to raise awareness. So maybe creating tags that can be used as hashtags on social media. This allows other people to join in on your campaign and support you on their own social media and bring in their own followers. So it really sort of widens your audience. Webinars like this are a really great way to engage people and excite them about the work that you're doing in your organisations. Again, vibrant Instagram posts to share these events and also to make your social media pages eye-catching so people want to spend more time and want to know more about your organisation. Lastly, what I feel is the most important is videos, either short and snappy videos that grab the attention of people watching, or sort of long, more drawn out videos that really go into depth and detail on certain topics. I think videos can show a really powerful part of our work in our organisations, and they really open the doors to getting involved and learning more. So, and I think this is essential in anti-trafficking and counteracting the traffickers' use of social media as well. So that is all from me, and I really hope this has shown you or given you a glimpse of the power of media, and also excites you for the things that your organisation could do and that RENATE will be getting up to too. So if you're interested to find out more, I can put our social media in the chat box below now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Very insightful. I have had someone actually pose a question on the chat saying, are we going to have some training to use these new tools? And I wonder if I could, Rachel, you could start by answering that in terms of the social media you've just talked about, and then in general, if any of the other speakers would like to come in to answer that question.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a really interesting thing to explore. It's such a sort of big part of everyone's lives. I think it would be a great thing to have training on. Yeah, I'll pass over to someone else who sort of knows a little bit more about the training and how that works. But yeah, Patricia.
Thank you. We've just had an amazing week of training on communications, and so it's perhaps that could be replicated. It would be you know, up to the core group, and when we meet, maybe to do that, or to give the details of it, because it was very, very worthwhile.
So yes, my understanding is that you know, a number of trainings are put on for RENATE members throughout the year, but obviously some of you on this webinar are not yet RENATE members, and that might be a little nudge for you to look at perhaps becoming one. But also I know each country around RENATE do look at trying to do some local training as well. And my suggestion would be to also speak to the country representative of RENATE, or the country that you're based in, to see if there's anything local and in your language to help with the training as well. Would anyone else like to come in about training?
Annie, I can speak, but I can't turn my video on. But what I'd like to say is that I'd like to back up what Patricia said, but also to say that maybe in the light of what Rachel's just said, maybe we could look at training online in a visual way, you know, through Instagram or whatever, perhaps be a little bit more creative and give greater opportunity, perhaps. Yeah.
That would be certainly, I'm sure, very beneficial to lots of the people watching tonight. Okay, so I haven't seen any other questions come on the chat at this point, so I'm going to move on to our next speaker. Please, if anybody listening tonight would like to raise another question, you know, at an appropriate point, I'll try and bring that question out to be discussed openly again. We're now moving on to actually a pre-recorded presentation by two sisters who are based in Malta, who are RENATE members. And this is Sister Margaret Gonzi and Sister Rosalinda Sekel. They are both looking at raising awareness against human trafficking through the medium of prayer and reflection and spirituality. So it's quite a different approach to what you've heard so far, but it should also be very much considered in this whole remit. So if I can ask Rachel to start the recording from our Maltese sisters.
I am Sister Margaret. With me there is Sister Rosalinda Seiker. We are both Good Shepherd sisters, and we are listening to the cry of God, the Good Shepherd. He is asking us to stop, to keep our eyes open, to speak out, and to keep within our hearts the victims of human trafficking. I'm going to light a candle, and as I light it, I invite you to keep the victims within your hearts and to pray with us. I am going to tell you a story called Bring Me Back. Malati wanted to better her family's life. One day, she heard of one of her neighbors who had returned from the Middle East, very nicely dressed and with enough money to spend. This made her go to an agency where she bought a ticket for a good amount of money and went abroad with great hopes. She comes back in a wheelchair. There is no hair on her head. Some of her teeth have fallen. She tells us, "Today I am helpless. Still I see marks on my body, patches of cuttings and burnings on my body. My right hand cannot be used, and my toes too are damaged. Today I cannot do any work. Not even wash my clothes, nor cook, nor sweep. Everything has to be done by my husband and my daughter." She has a story to tell. To whom shall I tell my story? To whom shall I tell of this injustice that I have experienced? Malati asks. I will tell you her story, but with a prayer, Psalm 30, which is a really heartfelt prayer to God to save the victims.
Have mercy on me, Lord, for I am in distress. Tears have wasted my eyes, my throat, and my heart.
Malati worked in a 3-story house where there were 13 children. She says, "Every day from morning till the next morning I worked, but never a word of appreciation. Slowly, Madame began to beat and to threaten. If you don't do the work which my children say, I will put you in the desert." Many times, the children put her in the food and showed them to Madame. Then the beating would start. I spent 3 months in this house. One day, I asked for my 3 months' salary. Madame said, "Your salary was taken by the agency."
For my life is spent with sorrow, and my years with sighs. Affliction has broken down my strength, and my bones waste away.
Malati phoned the agency about her salary. The agency never gave her the salary.
In the face of all my foes, I am a reproach, an object of scorn to my neighbors, and of fear to my friends.
Then the agency put her in another house, where there were 2 children and the parents. In the house she had to work 23 hours a day. Malati says, they did not even give me a pillow. All they gave me was a small sheet, and they beat me every day.
Those who see me in the street run away from me. I am like a dead person, forgotten, like a thing thrown away.
The father used to cut me with a knife and take the blood with his tongue and laugh. My whole body was wounded. I could not walk. I had to crawl to move. Whenever I asked for my salary, he took heated irons and burnt my lips and then put plasters on the burns.
I have heard the slander of the crowd. Fear is all around me, as they plot together against me, as they plan to take my life.
Most of the time, after a beating and when I got sick, they took me to private hospitals. At the end, they admitted me to a hospital where the authorities informed the police. Then I came home in a wheelchair. My prayer, dear friends, to God for Malathi and each person, man, woman, child, victim of greed, cruelty, money. Let us pray with great trust.
Release me from the snares they have hidden, for you are my refuge, Lord. Into your hands I commend my spirit. It is you who will redeem me, Lord. O God of truth, you detest those who worship false and empty gods. As for me, I trust in the Lord. Let me be glad and rejoice in your love. Be strong. Let your heart take courage, all who hope in the Lord.
That was wonderful. I'm sure we're all feeling very just full of amazement, the Lord, and hopefully that reflection has really helped us open our hearts to this awful crime of human trafficking. And I'm now going to move on to our next presenter. This is JP O'Sullivan. He is also going to be speaking from Ireland tonight. He's a RENATE member and he works for an organisation called MECPaths, which stands for Mercy Efforts for Child Protection Against Trafficking. And it's particularly focused on the hospitality industry. This evening, JP is going to talk to us about how at MECPaths, they use awareness raising to help protect children. So over to you, JP.
Thanks, Annie, and good evening from Dublin. I'm just going to share my screen with you. So just to say that Yes, and it's correct. What we do is we focus our work on working in partnership with the hospitality sector initially. So MECPATS was established in 2013 by the congregational leadership team of the Congregation of the Sisters of Mercy, led by two RENATE members who are here this evening, Sister Mary Ryan and Sister Patricia O'Donovan. So the focus of the work in 2013 until 2020 really was collaborative action in partnership with the hospitality industry, focusing on hotels and hotel groups, delivering training to staff on how to identify potential child trafficking victims, how to respond, and most importantly, how to report any suspicions to the police. The focus extended in 2020 in response to requests from other services sector bodies, including the Private Security Authority of Ireland, the Irish Airports Authority, and the online recruitment industry, really all of whom felt that their staff and management could benefit from the training that MECPATS provides. So we're quite often asked the question, does child trafficking intersect with the hospitality industry? And why focus on the hospitality industry? Our response is that rather than try to address the entire issue of child trafficking, as MECPATS really only has 2 staff members, we work to assist one industry to apply change to address the issue of human trafficking. We offer some very practical responses for what industry can do. We're aware that the issue of trafficking is so vast and so big and so challenging, that we provide what we refer to as not rocket science pieces of information for hotel staff. So we're quite aware that traffickers can quite often seek to take advantage of the privacy and anonymity that hotels can provide. We regard hotel staff as those most likely to encounter a victim of child trafficking as they're being moved around in private. And we're very aware, and we do say to hospitality staff and management, that we're not saying that hotels or the hospitality industry is responsible for child trafficking or indeed for human trafficking. What we do say is that everybody has a role to play, and that hotel staff and management can be the eyes and ears on the ground for us. So I'm going to try to play a short video for you. Hopefully it will work. It's just really showing what is happening in hotels around the world and what it is that MECPATS are trying to respond to.
I've been in a bunch of hotels. Nice, not so nice. I've seen them all. The worst is when my pimp books a room for the day and I gotta work all kinds of men, one after another. Last week on our way, the new girl I work with asked me how old I was. 17, I said. I lied. I'm really 13. On our way out of the hotel, the guy at the front desk looked at me. We looked at each other. I feel like he knew something was wrong or off or whatever, but he looked away. They always look away. It's weird because there must be something they can do. Right?
That video was created by ECPAT USA, whom MECPATS has collaborated with in the past. When we do our work with hotels on the island of Ireland, we're quite often met with the response from staff that, yes, we've had things that have happened in the hotel. We weren't quite sure what to call them or to name them, and we didn't really know what to look out for, so we just did nothing. And I think when we talk about the safety and protection of children, we cannot say that we just did nothing. So our workshops are very, very straightforward. We provide indicators, which I'll show you in a while, things to look out for. But again, staff would say they've had experiences with young persons with children entering the properties for the purpose of exploitation, and they quite simply at the time were so taken aback they were shocked into doing nothing. And so MECPATS is a response for the industry to make sure that something is done going forward. So how vast is the problem within the hospitality industry? Well, research conducted around the world has placed hotels and other accommodation providers at the forefront of locations where victims of trafficking can be identified. In the USA, hotels have been identified as the second most common venue where victims have been located, with 95% female and overall 45% of child victims found in hospitality industry and hotel properties. In Europe, over 93,000 victims of sexual exploitation have been identified in hotels annually. And here in Ireland, in a piece of research conducted in 2017, 95% of hotel staff interviewed were unaware of their own legal responsibility to report any suspected incident of trafficking to the police. So as I mentioned, what MECPATS does is quite specific. It's unique to Ireland. We're the only organisation addressing the issue of child trafficking at present. But what I also did mention as well is that it's not rocket science. So what we do is we provide lists of indicators. So general indicators, we provide lists to the staff and the management. We advise them not to take any one indicator to mean that there may be a case of trafficking presenting itself, but instead to take a few indicators, to take your own human instinct into account, and to consult with your colleagues should any suspicions arise. So what we encourage is that if a member of front of house has a suspicion, that they would consult a colleague in perhaps in room service or in the hotel restaurant and say quite simply, you know, there's a person staying, there's a family staying, there's a group staying. This is what I think something might not be quite right. Can you keep an eye? So working to build up a picture. But we also do advise that if any individual has a feeling that a child is at immediate risk, they must report it immediately to the police. So we also provide lists of indicators to front of house, which will differ from the general indicator. Similarly, lists of indicators for housekeeping and room service, things to look out for. So we, in addition, provide additional indicators to the security guard staff that we work with and to the industry staff that are working in the area of recruitment. So there have been quite a number of responses internationally and nationally. The World Travel and Tourism Council established a working group in 2019 to address the issue of trafficking, and groups like the Marriott and the Hilton Group have initiated mandated training for all staff on the issue of human trafficking, so how to identify victims, how to report, and how to respond as a team. Here in Ireland, 4 of our leading partners are the Prem Group, Trigon Hotel Group, the Gleneagle Group, and the Delata Group, again, who've initiated mandated training for all of their staff. And Prem Group in 2019 received a national CSR award, Corporate Social Responsibility Award, for their work with MECPATS in countering child trafficking. So what we would say is, you know, one person can't do everything, but everyone can do something. And we're glad to be working in Ireland in partnership with the hospitality industry to do that something. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, JP. I know one of the questions that came up on the chat was, you know, what are the signs of somebody being trafficked? And you've just answered that brilliantly in terms of certainly child trafficking. Clearly, there are other signs too in other industries, but hopefully that at least goes part way to answering that question that came up on the chat.
Right. And what we can do, Annie, is we can make those lists of indicators available to attendees after, if that would be useful.
That would be amazing. So thank you very much. So I'm now going to move on to our next speaker. I'm delighted to introduce you all to Dr. Claudia Conroy. She is also a RENATE member. She's a junior doctor working in the West Midlands in the UK. And whilst studying medicine and public health at Birmingham University, she began working with RENATE then and formed her own group of medical students. And so I'm going to sort of pass over to Claudia now so she can tell us more about the awareness raising she has been doing within the NHS and the medical industry. Thank you very much, Claudia.
Thanks so much, Annie. So yeah, thank you. It's really lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me. So as you said, I've been a member of RENATE for a few years, and I've just graduated and started working as a doctor recently. So yeah, so I've been looking at how human trafficking is related to aspects of my job, so in the healthcare profession. So this is just a short presentation about how members of the healthcare profession may come across victims of trafficking and what they can actually do to help in any way. So, so you can see, so the health consequences of human trafficking are wide-ranging and also at the same time unique to the type of exploitation. So with so many different forms of trafficking, such as sexual exploitation, domestic servitude, labour exploitation, forced marriage, organ harvesting, forced criminality, child trafficking, and the drug trade, with such a wide range of abuse, there's going to be such a wide range of presentations to hospital. So research shows that most trafficking victims actually come across healthcare professionals, and they present to healthcare services. So latest research thinks that 88% of trafficking victims access healthcare during their ordeal. Around 80% of those are female. So as we've heard in some of the other stories we've had tonight, healthcare providers are often maybe the first and possibly the only professionals to have contact with victims of trafficking. So they may access healthcare through lots of these ways. So they may present to GP practices, sexual health clinics, to treat unwanted pregnancies, unsafe abortions, STIs, UTIs. They may come across into these. Various medical specialties, as we know that human trafficking, it has impacts on every single system in the body. The effects are devastating. There is not a single system of the body which is left untouched by human trafficking. Mental health is such a huge one. Even in med school, I came across a man who was being treated for an eating disorder, but we were going along the path of perhaps anorexia, depression, maybe it's a form of psychosis, but after multiple conversations and appointments with this man, we realized that this man, he wasn't eating hard food. That was his eating disorder. He wasn't eating hard food because it reminded him of his ordeal of swallowing his own teeth during his trafficking. And it was just heartbreaking to think that it was only after months of talking with this man that he disclosed that. So that's the way in which it may come up. But most often, emergency departments can be the most important place to pick up human trafficking. This is for a variety of reasons. So traffickers, they often view emergency services as a place where they can get a quick fix. Their victim can be fixed quickly, but then also just slip under the radar because healthcare professionals are under such tight time restrictions in A&E. So that's a really important place where we can come across them. So individuals who experience human trafficking have a range of health consequences, but then at the same time, it's bidirectional. So people who are trafficked are more likely to have health conditions, but because they're being trafficked, they're less likely to actually access care and healthcare services for their conditions. So they're doubly vulnerable. It's heartbreaking. But so despite up to 88% of trafficking victims accessing healthcare staff are not prepared and they're not confident enough to safely identify and escalate victims of trafficking. So it's just heartbreaking that with more than 40 million people trafficked globally, we have 35 million opportunities to actually help them. So here are some red flags which healthcare staff can identify. So as soon as they come into your services, you may pick up on something that they might be with someone who's exhibiting controlling behaviour. So, for example, they might not let the patient actually speak for themselves. They might actually have the patient's identity documents. they will be very reluctant to leave you alone with this patient. But this is an important thing because healthcare professionals, they have an unchallengeable right to be alone with the patient if the patient decides. So you can be alone with a patient for sensitive examinations or for sensitive history taking. So this is a really important thing because it's very unusual for someone to really insist on being there. Also, they may claim to be related to the patient despite missing key parts. So they might not know the patient's allergies. They might not know even a family history. They might not be able to tell you if their parents are alive despite being a brother or a cousin of the patient. And another thing which you'd come across in a social history would be that at-risk patients may report high-risk environment factors, such as living with a large amount of people or living at work. So these are things to really be alert to, because you might be this person's one window of opportunity to actually help them. Okay, so here are some of the physical indicators. So there's not a single sign which you would look at and say that person is definitely a victim of trafficking. There's not a specific thing which convinces you. It's going to be you building a picture of what you see in front of you. So some signs and symptoms should trigger further concern. So long-term trauma, which hasn't been treated, bruises in various stages of healing, signs of physical or sexual abuse, malnourishment, substance abuse, and poor hygiene, they should be causing you to escalate, or at least kind of hold on to this concern and maybe give them a bit more time and see whether they disclose anything. So labour trafficking victims, particularly those in high-risk industries, they might present with severe workplace injuries. And along with this, some stories, once a red flag which you'd have would be if a story changes, there will be inconsistencies in the stories which should alert you to think that something's a bit wrong here. Victims of sexual trafficking, they may report a high number of sexual partners or multiple STIs, STDs. You may see the effects of unwanted pregnancies or unsafe abortions. So these are all things which should trigger concern in you, and to think a bit harder of like whether there's something more you can find out about this person. So yeah, so this is just the tip of the iceberg. It's such a huge issue. So here's a few recommendations. So every healthcare interaction should come from a trauma-informed perspective. The last thing anyone wants to do is re-traumatize these people. We cannot even imagine some of the abuse that they've faced. The last thing you want to do is, as you're trying to help them, to re-traumatize them. So we need to also create and implement a training and response protocol. Right now, medical schools aren't as prepared in training their medical students at the moment. The resources aren't very well shared, and like even a few years ago, like after being at uni in Birmingham, we didn't have any training on human trafficking. So we need to have training protocols for students and staff. But this is the thing, we don't need to reinvent the wheel, because there are existing protocols and screening services for things such as domestic violence and child abuse. So we do have training, even in e-learning opportunities and in med school, to learn how to safely escalate. But then we can't do any of this without money either. So we need funding to ensure that healthcare professionals have access to these training. And then another thing is to do with safe escalation is we need to have a wider awareness of national hotline numbers, national referral mechanisms, and these need to be in discreet places in hospitals where victims of trafficking can safely access these and ask for help. So yeah, so there's lots of ways in which we can help, but sadly right now we're just not prepared enough for it. So together we can all make a difference to the lives of victims of human trafficking, who all deserve to live in the fullness of life. Yeah, so thank you very much. That concludes my presentation. I could have gone on for hours, but I'm just really looking forward to working with RENATE and healthcare colleagues to ensure that we're all able to do our bit to help the most vulnerable. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Claudia. That's so insightful. Many of us do the doctors, do the hospital, and our eyes are closed. And hopefully tonight you've opened our eyes and helped us realise that there is another area, another place that we can be looking out for these signs as well. So thank you so much. I'm now going to move on to our last speaker of the evening, although she has already spoken today. And this is Sister Imelda Poole, who is the president of RENATE. She's going to finish off our evening by talking to us about some ethical considerations to do with human trafficking, and to try and prick our consciences, but also to get us all talking and spreading awareness about this terrible, terrible crime. So over to you, Imelda.
Thank you, Annie. I realise that time is moving on, but I hope people will not mind the extra 5 minutes at the end of this webinar. In fact, Annie is correct that this is my subject, but in fact, I was invited and it was a secret when we made this agenda, so I wasn't able to respond to the invitation of supporting the Bakita Day events for next year until today, really. The news only came out this week. So my subject is on economy, which of course is intimately related to ethics. And I want to explain that next year on February the 8th, as has already been said, there will be the next year's International Day of Prayer dedicated to those enslaved people who have been abused by their brothers and sisters and sold as meat, really, as commodities in the marketplace of this world. And there is a team in Rome of sisters and priests and brothers and lay people who every year deliberate about this theme. And they chose this as being at the heart of maybe the problem, the causes behind human trafficking is what we'd call a greedy world. So Talitha Kum is the international network of religious and co-workers right across the world, including RENATE, who work together, especially on this day, to pray like in a marathon, which is what is going to be introduced this year because of COVID, a marathon of prayer to really begin this 10 years towards 2030 to combat human trafficking. As has been said over and over and over again, it's in solidarity. It's together that we can say, yes, we can. Together we will combat this crime. Thanks, Annie. So we're going to look at what is it at the heart of this evil that is creating billions of money by the traffickers in their selling of human beings, and millions of humans' lives being not destroyed but abused and put back into trauma and post-trauma impact, which disenables these millions of people from functioning. So the greed is the demand for cheap goods and cheap labor. It's a call to all of us to wake up and to say, yes, we are responsible. We are partly responsible for this crime. So in solidarity, we need to say, how can we become more ethical? How can we buy goods that have been made in places that are safe, that give dignity and respect to the workers? How can we really give time to educate ourselves? How can we consume less and be co-creators in the world to create a better environment for human beings to live in and to work in? So hubs are being made, yes they are, in Australia to begin with for us to go into to see if the companies where we're buying the food or the clothes or the goods from are ethically working, are creating the environment of ethical situations for the people who are working in those places. So we're looking at human rights here, and we're looking at, are we calling out in the world for politicians and financiers and local workers to always respond according to human rights. That is in terms of wages, in terms of the hours that people work, in terms of their environment, and in terms of their care. Remembering, in fact, that every human being has a capacity to grow. So it is the duty of any employer to ensure that the employees in their service have the chance for education, to be participating in decision-making in that place of work, to feel that respect. Where that is not happening, as we know we have sweatshops in Albania, where there are hundreds and hundreds of people working for incredible hours with very, very poor wages, with very poor conditions, and nobody is confronting this. Now, this is nothing to say other places where in the brickworks in India, where thousands of children are working in the most appalling conditions and their little lives being destroyed. So what we're calling for is for the bankers and the hedge funders and the brokers to follow the money, to ensure that money that they are actually dealing with is not coming from the hands and mouths of the poor, but through the greed of the traffickers and ourselves, perhaps, in buying and supporting this. Thank you, Annie. So here we have very relevant, we sew your clothes, make our factories safe. So what we are looking for is that we do not feed our greed without ethical insight. In other words, we have to stand back and say, you know, in what manner are we colluding with traffickers? We have to say and talk with our local politicians in the surgeries. Are the workmen, the workwomen, the children, is there any exploitation in the factories in our local situation? We have to look, as JP did, at the hotel industry, the airport industry, anything that's related to tourism, and say, are they being educated to being ethical in their practice and being proactive in addressing this crime that is right in front of their face? We had a situation where outside a house, a suburban house, there was an ambulance alongside a house of girls coming in and out, men coming in and out, and alongside a pole dancing van. And somehow the connection wasn't made until somebody made that very relevant phone call to law enforcement. So as all of our speakers have said, it's together we make a difference. So now we're going to show a little film, which is a film about finance, and we can begin to see a little bit how this chain of trafficking is infiltrating every aspect of our lives.
On any given day of 2016, over 40 million men, women, and children were enslaved. That's 1 in every 185 people. Modern slavery and human trafficking is both illegal and a big business, generating $150 billion a year. Surprisingly, in the era of mobile banking and microlending, a lack of access to credit is one of the main reasons people become vulnerable. This issue is rightly gaining the attention of global political leaders. In September 2015, 193 countries pledged to take effective measures to end modern slavery as part of the UN's 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The UN Security Council and the G20 have both recently called for public-private partnerships to end modern slavery and human trafficking. The financial sector is potentially both a part of the problem and a key part of the solution. From unwittingly handling funds associated with modern slavery, to traffickers using cash-intensive businesses, informal banking systems, or front companies to launder funds, and investors, too, may be funding businesses that profit from modern slavery, either directly or through their value chains. Innovative financing arrangements and financial technology innovation could, however, be an important part of the solution. Because of the enormous reach and diversity of the financial sector, it has a huge potential to shape the way our global economy works. Financial sector leaders have recognized the sector's responsibility to respect human rights in their businesses and to help fight modern slavery or human trafficking in the businesses they finance. Based on calls from the sector, the government of Liechtenstein, together with the government of Australia and the Centre for Policy Research at United Nations University, has assembled a group of like-minded actors to develop a roadmap for global action. This is the Global Multi-Stakeholder Financial Sector Commission on Modern Slavery and Human Trafficking, known as the Liechtenstein Initiative. The commission is convened by the Foreign Minister of Liechtenstein, Her Excellency Dr. Aurelia Frick, the Government of Australia, and the microcredit pioneer and Nobel Prize laureate, Professor Muhammad Yunus. It is chaired by Fiona Reynolds, the CEO of the UN-backed Principles for Responsible Investment. Members include survivors of human trafficking and child slavery, leaders from hedge funds, commercial and retail banks, institutional investors, international financing organizations, global regulators, and leaders in the fight against modern slavery and human trafficking. Over the course of several meetings between September and July, the Commission will look at the sector's approach to anti-slavery and anti-trafficking compliance, responsible investment and lending practices, and financial sector innovation to address the problem. At the end of the process, the Commission will offer a roadmap for action to put the financial sector at the heart of global efforts to tackle modern slavery and human trafficking.
Okay, so this film is actually coming out of a consortium of people. I'm sure Annie will get it in a minute, but it's made by a consortium of people based in Australia and India and America, and they are actually working together to address this whole crime within the finance industry, which is related to trafficking and the use of the billions being laundered by trafficking people.
Last one there.
We are demanding cheap goods, cheap clothes, cheap services. But who's paying the price for these? Who's paying the real cost?
For about £5 you can get a good, quick car wash. Car washes are associated with exploitation. There's signs that you can see that they're not being paid appropriately. When you have £5 per car, when it works out the hours that they're open and the amount of money they're bringing in, that's quite a lot of workers to divide between the money that's earned with the rental, the materials, everything. So in many cases, the money they earn, even though it's very little in our eyes, it's more than they may earn in their countries of origin, so they're still being able to earn money.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
My brother came to pick me up and said there is a better life in the United Kingdom. I should come over. When I came, my brother did not give me my passport. He was holding my passport and said, if I obey him, everything will go fine. If I don't obey him, he will deport me to my country so that I will go and continue my suffering. He will introduce me to different people that will be giving me money. After my brother will go to work in the evening, he will call them to the house. But they were not giving me money. Actually, I think they were giving her the money on my behalf. I never knew it was prostitution.
Thank you, Annie. So what was in our last slide, we were going to talk about, and we will just finish here in saying what can we do. So it's very, very important that all of us tonight remember that you do have the capacity to do something and to come on board with us. You have the capacity to educate yourselves, to go online, and there were so many amazing documents and interesting reading on this to help you to, when you ask the questions on the bus, on the chat rooms, in the tube stations, around the coffee bars, you will have something to say. Have you heard of trafficking? I've just heard about human trafficking. It's like a domino impact, that if the whole world is beginning to talk about it, then the politicians will have goodwill. The financiers, the hedge funders will have goodwill. You know, what happened when modern slavery, when slavery itself was banned by law in the 19th century? It was Aquino, really, a survivor of slavery, who wrote his story that triggered more and more slaves and slave owners to begin to even protest against their own kind who were doing this trade. So we can bring the courage to survivors to open their mouths and to speak with us, because they're the ones who have the power to change the world with us. And also, we can realize that by opening the conversations, we can be co-creators and not on our own. And the more groups and networks that come together, the more strength the voice will be. And the more the whole of the lawmakers, the leaders, the police, the law enforcers will begin to take this crime very, very much more seriously than they are doing today. So thank you for listening. Thank you for staying with us even after time. And apologies about that one film, but maybe we'll post it into Instagram so that you can all watch it anyway. Today, we can always achieve what we hope to achieve by following it through in all the other media processes. So thank you very much. I hand you back to Annie.
Thank you very, very much. And what a great way to end this evening. We've all now got an action plan to go out, to talk to people when we're allowed, a good socially distanced way. Talk to them, explore with them, tell them about human trafficking. So many people have got closed eyes about it, and look out for those signs. We will follow up with you all if you've registered your email address with us with materials from this evening. And I just want to say thank you very much for you all being so patient and staying with us, even though we did go on a little longer than planned. Have a great rest of your evening, and all of you, I hope you have a wonderful, peaceful, restful Christmas. Thank you very much.
Thank you.